Namespaces in Mixpeek are a way for developers to isolate the environments across their application. And this is important because in the field of KNN, K-nearest neighbor, you are using various embedding models to represent different data. And when you use different embedding models that have different dimension lengths, they need to be stored in their own collections. So whatever vector database you use, whether it's Pinecone, Weaviate, Quadrant, doesn't matter, you have to store these embeddings of varying dimensions independently. And so this is important because if you are going to tune an embedding model, if you're going to swap out one embedding model with another, you're going to have to isolate the original embeddings with the new embeddings before and after fine-tuning. And so in Mixpeek, we have the concept of namespaces that allows you to isolate these embeddings, these vectors across your different environments. And this does an additional value of having lower and higher environments. So you can kind of have a staging environment, a prod environment, and a development environment that has completely independent underlying data for each of these environments. And so we have one value of separating our embeddings in the namespace. Another is separating the entire data set entirely. And so this is what namespaces look like. We have, on one hand, the name of the namespace as well as the embedding models that we can use. This is a list of embedding models that are currently available. And we have three options as far as embedding models that you can use. Option one is the let Mixpeek handle all of the underlying selection of the embedding models. So if you just want to use text, image, multimodal, audio, and keyword, you just use those as the model ID, and we will select the state-of-the-art embedding model for each of these. However, if you want to use a predetermined embedding model, you can select the full model ID to use in the namespace embedding model parameter. And then finally, if you want to use your own embedding model, you can do that as well. And this is a bit of a more hands-on process. So if you want to use your own embedding model, please reach out. Right? And so we have the embedding models that we can select in the namespace, but we also have the ability to kind of define payload indexes. And payload indexes are really important because they allow you to devise more performant queries as your underlying data set evolves. So for example, when you ingest an asset, you can supply metadata that then gets used, if you select it, in your feature search. So when we're doing a feature search here, we can use various filters on different keys. And as your collection expands in size, it's important to build indexes, payload indexes on the keys that you were going to frequently devise filters for. And so just like embedding models, payload indexes are scoped to the namespace. And so it's important that you kind of define these payload indexes up front. That way you have queries that are not suffering in latency and they are performant as your metadata, as you include more metadata in the assets that you ingest. Payload indexes can be updated over time. Vector embedding models cannot. So embedding models are static, payload indexes are dynamic, right? And so let's do this. So namespace names have to be unique across your organization. So you cannot use a namespace that already exists. And so we'll just call this T2. And we have these three embedding models. And so these are embedding models that I've already defined or are already being selected from the available model registry. But we can also use image, we can use text, and we can use multimodal to have them kind of pre-selected by the Mixpeek engineering team. And so now, finally, whenever I want to ingest an asset, whenever I want to create a collection, I have to include either this namespace name, T-2, or the namespace ID in my X namespace header in every request. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So we have in our header, we have the X namespace -T here. And so we can do T2, right? Or we can do the actual namespace ID. Either one doesn't matter, but it's important that we are including X-namespace in the header of every request where we want the namespace scoped to. Now, you don't need to include a namespace in your requests. It's just the namespace. If you don't include a namespace, the requests that you do are just going to be scoped globally. And that doesn't mean that your data is going to be shared across other users. It just means that you are going to be using the global model registry, the global payload indexes. And then you won't be able to have embedding models or payload indexes that are scoped independently on your own. So just the ability to kind of have more custom, flexible search experiences for your own predetermined embedding models and your own predetermined payload indexes. So that is the namespace functionality in Mixpeek. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.